This is your workshop, where the design on your blueprint becomes your finished product. You are working with very powerful tools, and you must make sure you use them safely. In industry, safety is regarded as being as important as cost and quality. Accidents don't just cost money, they can affect you for the rest of your life. There are different safety rules for every machine. It's up to you to know them and use them. When you start a job, you decide which tools you'll be using, and you should make sure you know how to use these tools safely. If you don't know, then ask. Your first step is to tuck in any loose clothing and use a work coat. If long hair is caught in a machine, you can get injured. You need to think ahead to prevent accidents from happening. Each job requires different protection, which means you may have to change your protective equipment frequently. All workshops use electricity. The best way to stop machines in an emergency is to cut off electricity. Every workshop should have emergency stop buttons within reach of your workspace. They cut off the power to all nearby machines. An earth leakage system turns off the power instantly in case of machine damage, excess current, power overload, water exposure, lead damage, or current surges. To avoid tangles, use leads of the right length. Pendant power points will keep them off the floor. Don't pull the plug by the lead, as it will eventually break and become live. If the plugs are clear, you can check for damage. You have to use hand tools properly. They can give you nasty cuts or bruises. Use the right tool for the job and use it properly. Chisels, for example, must point away from you. The wood has to be secure. The chisel should be sharp, or it can slip and cut you. While each machine does a specific job, there are some safety features that are the same for all of them. The off switch stands out, so in an emergency, you would hit it first. The safety zone is a no-go area when someone is using the machine. Safety guards cover anything that's moving. There are also emergency stop buttons on the walls. You have to familiarize yourself with the safety features of each machine. When using a lathe, your forearm should be horizontal, so you may have to stand on a platform. The wood has to be held firmly so it doesn't break loose. The tool rest must be close to the rotating timber to avoid the tool jamming during cutting. Spin the timber by hand, checking that the timber will spin cleanly. If the tool rest is too far away, you lose control of the chisel and it could break. For obvious reasons, the start-stop switch is at knee height. There is a danger of splinters flying off the wood, so spot cutting is a way of making sure the splinters are small. Cut carefully so the chisel doesn't dig in and kick back. Whatever you do, don't let the chisel touch the chuck. Before sanding, take out the tool rest so your hand doesn't get caught. Make sure you don't get your sleeves caught. The main thing to watch is that you don't get anywhere near the chuck. Fine dust can cause long-term lung damage and may also bring out allergic reactions. This is why you use a dust extractor and mask. It's important to clean up your wood shavings because they make the floor slippery. Safety procedures learned on a wood lathe are essentially the same for a metal lathe. The metal lathe operates differently. It has gears and the cutting tool is fixed. The job is located and locked into a chuck. Larger jobs need the support of a tailstock. You must choose a feed setting that will automatically cut the metal at the right speed. Each metal has its own setting. Working the metal can make it quite hot, so you may need a coolant. This will reduce the chance of burns. Be careful not to burn yourself when you've finished, and don't forget the shavings can be hot too. With a disc sander, cut on the downside because this holds the wood in place. Cutting on the upside will shoot dust and maybe even the job itself up into your face. The table should be close to the disc so the job and your fingers don't get caught. Make sure the dust extractor is turned on. With a bench drill, you have to hold the job steady or it can spin round and cut you. After you have tightened the chuck, make sure you remove the chuck key before turning the drill on, otherwise it could fly out and hit someone. A center punch mark will stop the drill wandering. Be cautious with all metal shavings. They can be sharp and hot. You won't be allowed to use a saw by yourself. It's extremely dangerous. You can only use it with a qualified teacher present. Before you cut, think ahead. You can't afford to get halfway through a cut and get stuck. The guard must be in place. You should adjust the blade so it's as high as possible, then the teeth will be cutting downwards, so the saw won't kick the wood backwards. Even so, kickbacks can still happen, so you must stand to one side or you could be hit hard. If you use push sticks, you can keep your fingers away from the blades. With long pieces of wood, you need someone to tailor out and, in case of kickback, stand to one side. The same procedures apply to the jointer. The main danger when using a grinder is that the wheel can explode, especially if it has been hit by something. To avoid this, stand aside and then test the wheel by turning the grinder on and letting it run at full revs. As with the lathe, adjust the rest close to the wheel. If you don't, you can lose control or the job will jam. With too much of a gap, this could happen. If the metal gets hot, cool it in water. The thicknesser is similar to the circular saw and jointer. You must stand out of the way in case of kickback. Compared with the circular saw, the bandsaw looks tame, but don't forget that it can cut through bone like butter. Drop the guard to expose the minimum amount of blade. This supports the blade close to the wood. Keep your fingers to the side away from the cutting line. Again, plan your moves so you know you can finish your cut. Before using a power tool, work out what will happen when you turn it on. Predict which way it's going to push you. If you fix a job down, you've got two hands free to control the tool. When you run power leads, make sure no one will trip over them and that they can't get tangled or damaged. Make sure you have enough lead to complete the cut. Wait that extra few seconds for movement to stop before making adjustments or putting the tool down. Cutting tools should be sharp so they don't jam. The waste side of this job must be held. Before you use a router, make sure the plunge cutter is working. Use two hands. If you're pushing in the wrong direction, the blades will climb up out of the cut and the router will be out of control. The job is not finished until your work area is clean. There are lots of reasons, but one of the most important is to prevent slips, trips, or falls. A clean workshop is a safer and better place to work. More people die from work injuries than car accidents. For a safe workshop, you need to identify its hazards. Then assess the risk associated with the hazard. And finally, control the risk. Here, the stool and the timber on the ground are blocking access to the fire extinguisher. In this case, remove the obstruction. Workshop injuries can seriously affect the rest of your life. No one can afford to lose sight or limbs. You must make sure that you and your workmates work safely.